Welcome, everyone. Good morning. How's everyone doing? Good. All right. First one. My name is Naga Surendran. I'm a Senior Director of Product Marketing. So welcome to this session on streamlining AI apps with Azure Application Platform. And with me, I have Scott.
And I'm Scott Hunter I'm VP of Product for the Azure Developer Experience team. We build a bunch of the PaaS services, developer tools you might use to interact with Azure. And later, we're going to bring up Anthony Shaw, who's going to do some demos for you folks. But I'll turn it over to you, Naga, and come back in a sec.
Thank you, Scott. So let's jump in, right? So, obviously, the theme of the conference quite a bit is around AI and how is that impacting application development. So, well, AI has been around for a couple of decades. It's really this transformation with generative AI that's changing the landscape for app development. Now, the question is, what makes an application AI app, right? So we think of it as three different parameters. First, AI apps kind of allows you to use natural language rather than the traditional interfaces that we all use in software today. Second, it's closely connected to data, and not just any data, it's the right data. So you can have sort of the efficient actions. And then lastly, it's really personalized to the user and how they work, right? So this helps drive engagement and productivity. So in short, we think of AI apps as allowing you to deliver sort of business value quicker. And then we will share how we are doing that with our Azure Application Platform. Now, when you look at the industry, this excitement around AI is also translating into sort of historic levels of investment, right? So IDC predicts 1 billion new applications are forecast to be produced by 2028. And Gartner forecasts that 80% of enterprises will have deployed some form of Gen AI-based applications in 2026. And finally, it's not always possible that you are going to build new apps, right? So equally, modernizing your existing investments is a big aspect here as well, and that's AI is driving modernization as well. Now, the question for many of you is, how do you make this transformation real for your organization, right? So we think there are three key areas to get you started here. First, looking at what are the use cases that are aligned to business value. While we can always start with technology and AI models, we like to think of, we see customers always starting with sort of the use case, and that makes it easier for you to sort of convince your business to go on this transformation. Second, you have to decide whether you are going to modernize your existing application or build new, right? So a lot of the times we see customers modernizing existing application and data estate. And then lastly, having the platform operations to ensure you are set up for success as you scale this, right? It's easy to get started with proof of concept, 1 or 2 apps, but when you have hundreds of AI apps around, you got to have the right guardrails, trustworthy AI, security, all of those aspects around platform operations. So let's take a look at a little bit of the use cases that we see today. We've been internally cataloging the use cases that our customers are implementing already, with thousands and thousands of these implementations today in production. And when you look at it, right, so understanding those sort of where to focus the AI investment is number one job for all of us. Now, as you think about this AI investment, thinking about ROI, that's a question that comes up quite often, right? So think about not just cost, what else can it be helping you with, whether it's time savings, customer satisfaction, employee engagement, employee wellness. So a lot of those benefits that can be hard to quantify immediately. We think of it as 4 different areas or categories where AI apps are really helping drive transformation. The first one is with customer experiences, things like personalization, accelerating content delivery for your marketing. Second, employee experiences. Really, it's unlocking the organization knowledge, right? So the power of generative AI, when you can feed all your organizational data, it gives you the information on your fingertips, in seconds. Third, how can you use it to reshape business processes and operate more effectively, right? So that's top of mind for a lot of our customers. And lastly, around product innovation. How can you deliver sort of groundbreaking customer experiences in your products and solutions? Let me share a couple of customer examples with Vodafone and KPMG and how they are prioritizing their AI use case and delivering value. Vodafone, many of you might be familiar, is one of the largest telecommunication companies in the world, and they serve 330 million customers, 15 different countries. They really wanted to provide a personalized customer experience. So what they did is build two new solutions. One is called Toby, and the second is Super Agent. They actually enhanced their existing chatbot called Toby, which is a modernization exercise with generative AI utilizing OpenAI. Now, the advantage is now Toby, in this case, can have context-aware conversations, adapting the responses based on what the customers are asking, whether it's paying bills or a network issue or ordering a new phone. Today, Toby handles 45 million inquiries in 15 different languages. So that's the other aspect, is easily you can use generative AI to translate between languages and so on. Now, the results of this, the impact is pretty staggering. As you can see, the first time resolution went up from 70% to 90%. Today, they handle more than almost 70% of their sort of inquiries through the chatbot, which is Toby here. And then the other 30%, you always, it's not always possible that a chatbot can help you, right? You need a human agent to help you. And in this case, they built Super Agent, which is a co-pilot for their agents to get their job done faster. The advantage with that is when the customer is interacting digitally and then switching to a human agent, they get a quick summary of all the interactions. So they have the information ready to go. And second, the Super Agent is connected with their vast knowledge base. And so the agent is able to find the information literally in seconds, right? So we've all had that experience where you're put on hold for minutes, sometimes even longer, while the agent is finding the information. Now, building your co-pilot with the organizational data and generative AI can help you solve that. Net, Vodafone experienced the customer call times have gone up by at least 1 minute. They also increased their Net Promoter Score significantly by 20 points, which is a significant jump if you've been tracking NPS. Now, switching to KPMG, they're a global leader in professional services. They've been on this AI transformation journey. What they wanted to do is boost employee productivity. So they introduced KimChat, which is an internal custom copilot, really to automate many of the common tasks that their employees do. And what they noticed is their productivity for the employees went up at least by 50% for use cases like drafting documents, which generative AI is generally great at, even communication, sales proposals, and research. Now, 70% of employees are using this KimChat, and they make over 120,000 requests since their launch, and they're scaling this globally. So those are just a couple of examples. And when we look at sort of the customer implementation, we see this across all industries, right? So whether it's financial services or retail or manufacturing, as you can see here, these are real-world customer implementations that we have cataloged internally. And so the transformation is real, the platform shift is real in sort of using generative AI to really transform the landscape of application development and deliver business value. With that, I will hand it back to Scott to share more about our technology innovations on how Azure Application Platform can streamline your AI app development with our platform services. Scott, over to you. All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Naga. I'm going to talk for a couple of the things that we're doing, and then we have Anthony's going to come out and do some cool demos. And so I just want to make sure people know there's demos coming. I'm a demo, hands-on coding kind of person. So in our team, we work on a whole bunch of things. One is obviously everybody's heard about Copilot. It's kind of the AI coding experience that we've been doing for about a year now. But we're adding new things that are actually coming out right now, which is there's a new Azure Copilot that you can actually install in Visual Studio Code. And with that tool, you can start asking questions to the cloud. Hey, how is my app doing? Can I see the logs? Has my app had crashes in the last 10 minutes? Stuff like that. Hey, I'm in my tool, and how would I deploy this code to Azure? You can ask all those types of questions. And so, AI-assisted coding, both at coding and actually using the tool, is something that's super important to us. We're going to talk about some of the platform capabilities that we have today, where you can actually have a great way of getting a GPU, scaling a GPU for AI efforts. We have lots of cool methods for running your AI in a sandbox and throwing it away when we're done. And then, of course, I kind of led with the AI app development and operations. That's the start. So let's jump right in here. First off, our cloud platform is amazing. Our teams work super hard to be in these magic quadrants, but you can see that we're a leader in both container management. That's whether you want to use something like Azure Container Apps to run your AI app or AKS to run your AI app. And we are also a leader in the cloud application platform. That is our PaaS platforms, whether that's App Service or Azure Functions. So we're going to talk about both of those a little bit. And so we are super happy that we're there. And we think we have the most mature cloud and tool experience you can get. No other vendor has the developer tools that we have in the Visual Studio family, GitHub and Azure DevOps, plus all of the great services that we have for building your AI applications. I want to talk about a couple of the cool things that we have. This is now generally available. This is the AI App Gallery. And so one of the most common questions our customers have when they come to us is, what can I do with AI? And so the intent of the AI App Gallery is to solve that for you. So I wish we had the URL on the page here, but this is a place you can go to, and you'll find end-to-end samples written in all the popular languages, using all the popular AI stacks. Everything you see here, you can easily use a tool we have called AZD, and you can deploy these applications very quickly to the cloud. They've got full CI/CD built into them as well. And so literally, this is the best getting started place if you've never tried AI or you want to start experimenting and working in that place. Next is, as I said, we build a tech called App Service. It's one of the best ways of hosting your applications. The benefits of a PaaS like App Service is that what we do is we actually maintain the operating system for you. We maintain the runtimes for you, so you don't have to worry about patching Windows or Linux. You don't have to worry about patching .NET, Java, Python, Node, etc. We do all that for you. That's what you get for the platform. And what we've learned over the years is many of our customers need to run like some kind of logging stuff. And so you notice here, there's a whole bunch of things here like Dynatrace, Datadog, New Relic. These are all platforms for doing observability. And what you can now do is you run a sidecar container next to your app service that has those things running right next to your application. If you have your own code you want to run there as well, you can do that as well, but this is a new feature that is just generally available today. Next is Azure Functions Flex Consumption. What a terrible name. My team builds this. It's like, the problem is we've been building Azure Functions for a long, long time, and the biggest complaint we've had with Azure Functions is it doesn't scale fast enough. And so the idea with Flex Consumption is we can scale you from 0 to 100 different instances of Flex Consumption in seconds. And we can also then scale you back down the same way. So the idea here is if you have a huge workload, a lot of AI workloads are based on APIs. Your APIs can scale up and down at a super fast rate. This is generally available today as well. Another important thing, all you hear from Microsoft is security, security, security. This is the first version of Azure Functions that supports private networking, and that's virtual networks. And that's the scenario where I want to say that my function, with all the scalability is running, I've got my main application running, and I want to make sure there's a private network between them. So the public internet can never see that function. Only my application can see that function. That's fully supported in this. And then again, any of the thing that we do in Azure Functions is going to be what we call serverless, and that means you can scale to 0, scale up, scale down. You only pay for the actual usage when your code is actually running. And so this is generally available today. Great place for running AI. This is we have a product called Azure API Management, and this is also generally available today is a new capability called Gen AI Gateway. And so things that we find out with our customers is, you have an OpenAI instance, and you run a bunch of applications. Well, those applications can all be hitting that instance, and they can be taking your tokens, and one application could starve out another application. And so this is a piece of tech that you put in front of your app, between your app and OpenAI. And what it can do, number one, is it gives you great observability. You can see exactly how many tokens each of your applications is using. It has a capability for giving you scale, where you can have more than one OpenAI instance, and this will actually federate and send different requests to different instances, so you don't overload your application. And then it has policies as well that you can actually set, saying how much AI one app can use over another app. And so, as you move to a world where you've got multiple applications and you've got high levels of scale, this is a super cool capability. Next, I want to talk about Logic App connectors for AI. So Logic Apps is a workflow platform that we built years ago. And one of my favorite capabilities of Logic Apps is most of our customers have existing applications, and they don't want to rewrite the application to add AI to it. And so, for example, imagine you have an existing application using something like a SQL database. Well, what we have here is a bunch of our connectors. Logic Apps has over 1,500 connectors to talk to various types of data: a Postgres database, a SQL database, a storage account, file system, whatever. And so what you can do is we've now got capabilities in Logic Apps to infuse AI with it. It's got connectors to OpenAI. And so literally without changing my source code for my existing application, I can go have a Logic App go pull data out of SQL database, run it through OpenAI, and have your app ready to do AI queries without having to change the actual app itself. In fact, I don't know if we're going to demo this, but one of the demo apps we're going to use, we added this exact capability to it where we were able to ask questions about a legacy SQL database, like how many albums can I sell this month? And so I'm super excited about that. We're getting into deeper AI tech here. This is tech that we actually use at Microsoft. If you do Bing Chat, you're actually running through this technology today. When you're doing AI, in many cases, we want to actually, for privacy reasons, once we're running your query, we want to throw the whole machine away so there is no history of whatever you asked. And so this is technology where you can actually get a session where a request comes in, we boot up a container, we run your code that does your AI queries, return the result, and we get rid of the entire VM afterwards. But it goes way beyond that. As you can see here on the slides, we've got great support for things like LangChain and Llama Index. And so it's just a great place to run any AI workloads. And as I said, we're using this at Microsoft ourselves to do Bing Chat. And this is super cool too. GPUs are expensive. And so in many cases, you have to ask yourself the question, do I want to go boot up a VM that has a GPU and keep that all the time? Or would I rather be able to have kind of an on-demand GPU available? And so this is public preview today. This is Container App's serverless GPUs. And so what you can do is when your app needs the GPU, we'll give you a GPU. And when your app is done, we'll put the GPU back away again. And so you're only paying for that GPU for the time you're using it versus having it owned all the time. And so this is a great way to control cost as you're doing AI, where you're only paying for those GPUs as you're training or using them for queries. And then finally, conversational diagnostics. This is something that we have a whole diagnostics team that tries to make it easier for you to self-repair your applications running in Azure. And in this case, you can ask questions, simple questions like, why is the CPU in my application high? CPU usage in my application high. You can have those types of conversations about your app. And what we'll do is we'll go scan and look at all the results of all the things we've solved for customers over the last decade and give you a great answer in return. And so, it's conversational in the meaning it's also, it actually gives you prompts, and so you'll get prompts of things to click to check. And so that's a quick run through of all the things that are kind of coming out today. And we kind of see this shift as you see here, traditional apps, monolithic, we're moving more to this microservice thing, but I do want to be very clear that in many cases, you don't have to change those existing apps. In fact, the demo, as I said, we're not going to demo this capability, but in many ways, a lot of the tech we work on is going to help you take an existing application and add Gen AI capabilities to it versus rewriting. And finally, this is we're going to demo this in a second. One of the biggest questions we hear from our customers that want to go on this journey is they want to move an app from on-premise to the cloud so they can add some Gen AI to it. we have a whole suite of tools to help you do this. First off, we have Azure Migrate. That will actually go out and discover all the apps in your enterprise. It'll go find what languages they're written in and give you a report letting you know what that stuff is. Then once you've got that, you go tell your developer, we have this Azure Migrate AppCat tools that we have, and you can run those on your developer machines, and they'll help you actually migrate your app to the cloud. They'll go look and find common things that you should change in your app, both for Java and .NET before that, and then you're live. And so with that, I'm just going to jump here and bring Anthony up to do demos of some of this stuff we just talked about. Here you go, sir.
Cool, thank you. Okay, hey everybody. Joining you from Australia. It's been a long flight to get here, so I'm glad to be on stage, stretching my legs. Cool, so I was given the task of demoing how you would migrate an application to Azure and then add some AI capability to it. And the demo I was given is an app that was written in 2010. So you'll see when we put it on the screen how old it looks and some of the tech that's in there. So really, when I kind of looked at this approach, so before working at Microsoft, I worked for one of Microsoft's biggest partners for about 10 years. And looking at this migration, how I probably would have done this is to think about how do you get the data off on-prem and into Azure. So if you're moving to Azure SQL, we would probably use the SQL migration tool, synchronize the two things. And then how would you try and lift and shift the app in the simplest way possible? So this is a on-prem legacy .NET application with on-prem SQL Server 2022. And I probably would use Front Door as a mechanism to really kind of be the entry point for the application so that you can switch back to the legacy app or you can switch forwards to the new application. So putting Front Door in front, basically, of the application so you can switch backwards and forwards as you need to, instead of doing one massive migration and then trying to move everything across. I'll show you the Front Door capability in a second. So that's what I put in place. And that's what I'm going to show you now. Cool. So we mentioned this tool, the Migrate Application and Code Assessment tool, or AppCat, it's a lot easier to say, is an extension in Visual Studio. So this is the app that we have. And I can right-click on this app and do Replatform to Azure, and it will bring up the AppCat tool. From the tool, I can then start a new report and then pick my target environment. Like I said, this is a legacy .NET application, so I'm going to pick App Service for Windows because legacy.NET only runs on, so .NET Framework, I'm going to stop calling it legacy.NET. .NET Framework only runs on Windows. So that's the easiest target for us. So if I go through to Next, pick which projects I want to analyze, and then give it any additional settings if I want to. I'm just going to ask it to look at the source code and try and understand, okay, what do I need to do to re-platform this application to Azure? And it's going to tell me, so the critical items in red are the ones I really need to address first. So if I go to aggregate issues, I can see a breakdown of the problems that we have to address before we potentially move this to Azure. So if I pick one of these, for example, so we've got scale, static content. It says in your application, you've got some images, some style sheets and stuff like that. They're all kind of bundled in the application. And if you were running on the cloud, the best way to do that would be to use CDN. And like I said in my architecture, I'm using Front Door. So Front Door, you can actually bolt a CDN in on top of it anyway. So I'm just going to kill two birds with one stone and use that as my CDN. And then I've got some mandatory items here. We're using Windows authentication for SQL, which is not possible in Azure SQL. I'm not an expert on that particular topic, so I can ask Copilot. And Copilot will actually look at the project and try and understand how would you resolve that particular issue. And then it would give you a breakdown. And also look at the connection string as I had in the application and say what I need to change. So it's going to say, we've got a couple of options. You could use manage the density. You could use traditional SQL auth. And then what would that actually look like in the application? Cool. So once I've addressed those issues, I was able to re-platform. Like I said, this is an old application. That's why it looks so beautiful. This is an old music store demo from 2010. I was able to move this to Azure with 0 code changes. So there's no changes to the actual application. The only thing I had to change is it's so old, the packages on there were really insecure. It hadn't been patched in ages, so I did have to update some of them. But I was able to move this application into Azure. So we've got that up and running. So the next thing is, how would we add some AI capability to this? This is an old .NET app. So the way I would do it is I would have, I'd bring in Azure OpenAI, but I'd put that within a self-contained application. And flex consumption is a great way of doing that because the app, I can use modern.NET, so I can use .NET 8 to run that application, and I can integrate with the LLM, with the GPT, and I can do that just inside the function. So what I've done for the music store is I wanted to add a search feature. And GPT-4o Mini is great for this task. So GPT-4o Mini, you can give it a small, specific task. And I've said, you're not an AI assistant. You just have one job, and your job is to try and guess the name of a record based on what the user has typed in. So that's my prompt. I've said, if you don't know the name, if you don't know what it is, just say, I don't know. Because otherwise, I don't want you to hallucinate or make anything up. This is a really cool thing to do, by the way, with prompts. Always give it that instruction. Tell it what to do if it doesn't know the answer. That helps you out of a lot of situations. If the user enters the query in any language other than English, work out the name of the record and return the result in English. So we're going to use these results to basically do our SQL search. So actually, Scott, I'm going to test you on this. So if I typed in Beatles Crossing the Road, which album would that be?
I don't know, I'm sorry.
OK, so Abbey Road. So as you can see, it's not behaving like a chat bot. Even though it looks like a chat, I'm basically using it like an API. Portishead debut album. OK, these are getting pretty niche now. Is Dummy. OK, so, and then...
I never would have got that, so.
That's fine. And then we've got a famous Dr. Dre album, but I've put the prompt in Spanish. OK, so it's giving me the answer in English. So our database is in English. It's giving me the answer as the Chronic. I have tested this with Japanese as well and Korean, and it works really nicely. So by just using GPT-4o Mini, we've basically added this capability. Like I said, I'm using Front Door. So what I've done with Front Door is basically use like a feature switch. So if I use the feature switch, it's going to add the search box in the application. And then I can search for something like Nirvana Baby. And once it's woken up, it's going to come back and say, I think you wanted Nevermind. It's going to use that as the SQL search and give me back the answer. So that's how I've added AI capabilities to a 14-year-old demo without having to upgrade it to massive changes. Cool. So other thing. So that's how we would migrate a legacy app. And my recommendation would be to try and only change one thing at a time. And it's really tempting once you start changing things with applications. Engineers are like, oh, let's go and fix all our code debt, and let's also change this and change that and change this. And you've turned from one simple migration of, let's move from on-prem to the cloud, or let's upgrade from this version to that version. And all of a sudden, you're changing like 10, 15 different things at once. It's really hard to test. So my recommendation would be to just change one thing at a time, test it. Front Door is a really cool way of switching backwards and forwards. And the AppCat tool really helps you identify what potential risks might you have in the migration. So that was our architecture. Now, if I was to start from scratch with like a modern app, and we were just targeting modern.NET, then we get benefits that we can run the app in a container. And that opens up a whole bunch of capabilities. So previously, I was running on App Service on Windows. If I was starting with .NET 8 or .NET 9, that runs in a container, so that can run nicely on Azure Container Apps. And we've got a lot more scalability options with container apps as well. So if I want to spin up 10, 20 instances of that particular container, I can do that. If I want to have different revisions, different versions deployed and running at the same time, that's really easy for me to do. Another thing I like about containers is, as a developer, it's really easy to run those locally on my machine, to test them, and I know that that's going to run very similarly to how it will in production as well. So once we've got that sort of architecture, We're still going to use the flex function component. So I'm going to reuse that search feature that I had for the AI. But one of the challenges I had with the app was that if I search for something in the store that it didn't have, like the Beatles' first album. Does anyone know what the Beatles' first album is? Please, Please Me. This is a really obscure piece of music knowledge. OK, so that's the name of the album. It doesn't have it in the store. So what could we do to improve that functionality? And we've got the AI there. I'm actually going to bring in, so this is the new version. I thought I used to work as a dev engineer. I was also a graphic designer, as you can see from this upgrade. So we've added AI to our application. And what I'm going to do is basically add vector as well. So in the architecture, in this one, I'm using Cosmos DB. This is available now in Azure SQL too. But what I've done is I've vectorized all of the database. So when I do a search, I can do a text search. I can also do a similarity search. So with this search, we had Beatles' first album, which is not in the store. So I do a search. The AI comes back and says, I think you want it, please, please me. We don't have it in the store, so I said, OK, what is similar to that? And it's basically just done vector similarity and come back and said, OK, here's some other Beatles albums. And it's also come up with this U2 album, and it's come up with the Stone Roses. So I can explain why. Oh, I've got 20 seconds to do it. But that one is called Pop, and it is a pop album. So one of the challenges with vector search is it will give you everything as a match. So the first 3 are good matches, the second 2 less so. But yeah, really, in summary, we've been able to vectorize our database and upgrade it. We can scale horizontally if we need to. And when I was doing this upgrade, I actually used Copilot Chat in Visual Studio to do most of the work for me. So cool, that's the whole demo wrapped up. And I'm going to switch back and hand over to Scott.
Thank you. OK. Quickly, I want to show a demo, and then we're going to bring a customer up on stage. I mentioned earlier that we have these migration tools. We are working on the next generation of these migration tools. In fact, I'll start the video. Grab a picture of this if you want to sign up for the waitlist for this. We have a Java one of these as well, but I'm talking about the .NET one today. And while I'm just talking, you're going to see a demo here. Things we hear from our customers is, these migration tools are great, but as you start using them, it takes too long. It could take months to actually migrate something. And so in this case, what we're doing is we're using AI to apply the changes from the tool for you automatically. So you don't have to actually write those changes. And in some cases like this that you're seeing right here, it didn't know how to do something, and it said, so I don't know how to do this. And so I went and coded the answer for that, and they can take what I just coded and then apply that to the rest of my application. And so the idea here is basically help you do mass migrations as fast as possible. And so if you have that picture of that thing, that'll get you on the private preview for that. And I'm going to hand it back to Naga.
All right. Thank you, Scott. So super cool innovations. I guess are we seeing the slides? Maybe not yet. Can we switch to this? I think I'm going to need some help with this, switching to the slides, if we can. OK, perfect. Thank you, Michael. So thank you, Scott and Anthony. So cool demo. So round of applause for Anthony and the demo team. So really fun one, too. So it's great. Now, I would like to invite Abdul Rahman, who is the Director of Architecture at Ernst & Young, to share how they embarked on their modernization journey. So welcome, Abdul.
Hey, Naga, thank you.
Thank you for joining us at Ignite. So can you share with us a little bit more about your role at EY and then the global audit platform that you're working on?
Well, thank you for inviting me here. It's just great to be here, to be with every one of you. So I work for EY Client Technology. I lead a team of architects, and together we build products and platforms for our assurance service line.
That's great. So this platform that you are working on, so there is a bit of modernization journey that you went through. Can you maybe talk through, how how you embarked on that modernization journey? What are some architectural decisions that you had to go through?
Yeah, so a little bit about this platform, right? This is our audit platform, right? We have deployed that globally in 30 plus regions. We target almost every major Azure region along with some on-premise regions, not the one that Satya just talked about this morning. We'll go there too, right? So we're always looking whenever new regions show up. But if I take you through the history of our platform, back in 2012, when we started building this, we did not think about cloud first. Okay, so everything was designed with on-premises in mind. So when the time came that we wanted to move this platform to the cloud, we had some hard dependency on some on-premise technologies that were not available in Azure back then, right? One example is that we wanted to add support for Azure Storage. And then another challenge is that if we move one particular instance of our application to the cloud, then how it will end up working, because at the end of the day, the whole platform is connected together via APIs and events, right? So we thought about this, and we added support for Azure Active Directory, which is Entra ID today, right? Along with that, we added support for Azure Service Bus. That did something really magical, because now everything would remain connected, and if we are moving regions up and down, nothing's going to break. And for end user, it doesn't really matter, right? In addition to that, we made heavy use of Azure Durable Functions, and we moved a ton of on-prem data into the cloud while application is in use organically, right? Again, without breaking the user experience. So now we are in Azure on-prem, right? We don't maintain two separate code bases. Yes, we use a lot of magic of just-in-time configuration to enable support for these services. And the last exciting thing that we're currently working on is migrating this application from Azure App Service to container apps. Okay. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, as you kind of alluded to, the transition from on-premises to cloud using the platform services, but you still have some on-premises
Exactly, we do.
and that consistency.
Yeah.
So the containerization helped a little bit with that,
Yes.
right? Can you talk to that consistency and how containerization sort of enabled and sort of some of the additional velocity that you're gaining?
I think there are a lot of benefits to containerize your workload. One of my personal favorite is this whole idea of container promotion, right? Oftentimes, as you guys know, developers in the room, that as we move from one environment to another, we kind of find ourselves in this need to rebuild and recertify and resecure thing. But the thing with containerization is once you have a good container, which is good to be promoted to production, you simply just promote them, right? So that you really supercharge our delivery pipeline. We also target, since I said we are global, so when we target a particular geography, we have to kind of recertify our solution. With containerization, we only do that once, right? So kind of create a gold image and reuse it as much as we can.
That's great. Yeah. We're all technologists at heart here, including me here, but as you think about that sort of what's in it for the business, right? Some of the outcomes. Can you talk to maybe what it delivered for your business?
Yeah, you see, coming from the on-prem world, one thing which is not acceptable to any business-critical application is having a very large time to recover from a failure, right? Yes, we were dealing with hours when we were on premises, but with Azure, we have reduced it to 8 minutes, right? So that's one. We're able to scale our application to over 350,000 unique users, okay? And we have, again, the fact that we maintain one code base, it's a cloud-native architecture in the sense, right? And we are maintaining almost touching a petabyte of storage today in cloud, okay? The last thing that I'm really excited about with the power of container apps is this whole idea of exercising blue-green deployments, right? We have people, our practitioners who don't want to get disrupted whenever we release a new version, right? So they say, let us finish the current work that we're doing, and once we're done doing that, then push the new version down. But then we have other people who are ready to basically accept the new tools that we've been building, right? So the challenge came that how can we keep these two group of people happy, right? So this is where the idea of blue-green comes in, that if you're currently conducting your work, we'll keep you on the blue conveyor belt, and if you have done your work, we'll put you over the green one, right? And then eventually you'll converge. But we're also going to stretch this idea of blue-green deployment because for us, it's not just a safe deployment strategy, but also the idea that we may stay in this blue-green state for a longer period of time, right? Because people have to finish their work, and then again, eventually they'll converge, right? So we're very excited about that.
That's great to see the.
And it's a native feature of container apps.
Right.
We don't have to build it ourselves.
That's a really cool use case of blue-green deployments to do it at scale globally. With that, I mean, any sort of best practices that you can share with the audience through your modernization journey?
I think from my point of view, we've been lucky to keep our technical debt in check, right? 12 years ago when we started, we were in classic.NET, just the example that we just saw in the demo. And today, most of our workloads are in .NET 8, right? So that enables us to containerize easily and kind of target all these latest and greatest cloud services. So
that's a great point about code modernization.
Exactly.
Process modernization with DevOps and containerization enabling sort of the agility. Finally, we're talking about AI apps here. Anything you want to share about how EY is approaching your AI journey?
There is a lot of work that EY is doing in AI space. We actually have teams from EY talking about taking a deep dive into what we're doing for EY. I can't speak on their behalf, but what I can tell you is that our platform is ready for adoption, right? Just the fact that we are in container apps, we are ready to embrace AI. Yeah.
Perfect. Right. That's great. Thank you for joining me here,
Thank
Abdul.
you. Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
So that's a great example of how modernizing both your code and your platform architecture and DevOps with processes and everything enables you to become sort of AI ready faster. So as we kind of wrap this session up, there are a few resources for you to go faster. Microsoft is investing in these programs, whether it's Azure Innovate or Azure Migrate and Modernize, depending on what you're working on. And we have delivered 10,000 projects through these programs. So then we are ready to do more. So we are continuing to expand our investments in these programs. So finally, in addition to this, we know that building reliable, secure, and scalable applications is a critical need, right? So Azure Essentials has brought together all the assets, tooling, and training focused on helping you sort of scale and secure all your applications. So take a look at those. And here's a QR code if you want to learn more about these offerings. And then we've got more resources in terms of whether it's free services for you to get started if you want to play around with some of the building AI apps or reference architecture or application templates. I think there are sessions that later today you can learn more about it. Here is a list of all the sessions and amazing sessions that will cover the full breadth of the application platform that Scott kind of shared. They will go in detail on each one of those announcements, particularly I would like to call out BRK 144, which is also a great session around. And then we have, so take a look at this and maybe add it to your schedule. And with that, I think we are wrapping up. So thank you so much for taking the time and joining us here. And thank you from
just want to say thanks,
Anthony.
And,
Abdul. So appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you, folks. Have a great Ignite.
Yeah, have a great Ignite. Thank you.